Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Drunk Camera Reviews. Hope everyone had a good 4th of July, for at least the American viewers, and the rest of them, happy Friday? Today we have here the Minolta X7a. Now, there's not much really to go over with this camera because it's cheap as shit. There's not much to it. It's missing a depth of field preview lever, it has no PC sync slot, it uses a horizontal cloth shutter instead of a normal vertical traveling metal shutter that a lot of cameras switched over to, but either way, it still takes pretty good photos. So, let's jump into it. Now, the Minolta X7a was released in 1985, and it did pretty well. I mean, it sold pretty well. It sold as a extremely basic beginner's camera that had some professional features, but it was very simple. Like there's not much to this stupid thing. But either way, it was an MD mount camera, so you can fit MD lenses on it, and those lenses are freaking good. Especially this one, the 50 f1.7, probably my favorite beginner 50mm lens for 35mm cameras. It's just insanely sharp, even wide open. But yeah, let's get into the camera a little bit more. We'll start off with the top plate because there's not really much else on the rest of the body. Start off with the top plate. Of course, you have your film rewind, which also acts as your film back door opener. And what you also have is your ISO selector. You just hold down this button right here, and you can go all the way up from 12 ISO all the way up to 3200. I usually just keep it pegged at 400 or 200, and it's good either way. You also have your on-off switch, which is right here. Yeah, you have the on-off switch. You also have your flash sync port. Easy enough. Or your hot shoe. That's what they call them. That's what they call them. Then you also have your viewfinder. Viewfinder is very, very good. I never had really any issues missing focus on this camera, and the meter that displays what your shutter speed is also in there, and it's very, very easy to read. So if you have poor eyesight or need glasses, it's pretty easy to read. Now, what you also have is your shutter speed window, which goes all the way from bulb to 1/1000th of a second, and then you have your auto setting. Funny thing about this camera, it only goes from 1 second to its lowest shutter speed is one second, but if you put it in auto mode, the lowest setting is 4 seconds. Don't know why it does that. I also have an issue with the auto mode. If you are overexposed in any way, well, just with this camera, maybe it doesn't affect other cameras, but I had an issue with the curtain not being synced up properly and causing the right quarter of the frame to be completely blacked out. It sucked to learn that afterwards because I had a lot of photos that all of a sudden cut off, and I liked a few of them, so I'll post them up here and show you what happened. Now, what you also have is your shutter button, which this one's kind of cool. Once you put your finger on it, it immediately activates the meter. You don't need to press it down, you just put it on there and it starts going the meter. Now what you also have is you have your film advance lever, and it is pretty plasticky. It's very basic. It's not your nice metal ones like on your Leicas and your Nikons and your Canons. It's just very, like, I feel like I could just snap this thing off. But it gets the job done, and of course you have your film counter window right there. Now on the front of the camera, you have your exposure lock, which if you hold this down, and then you can recompose, and it will lock in your exposure. And then on the other side, you of course have your threaded cable release. And then of course you have your lens, whatever it's called, release. You release the lens. Now the lens itself is, of course, 50mm f1.7, and it goes all the way up to f22, which then you can also lock it in f22, and I believe this turns it into complete auto, like set your aperture and shutter speed together, but don't quote me on that. I have no idea if that's correct or not. Now on the bottom of the camera, you have your battery port. It takes 2 LR44 batteries, and you also have your connections for your motor drive. The motor drives on these are actually pretty nice. They connect directly up to the camera. And you also have your film rewind button just right there. Now loading this camera is pretty easy. All you have to do is you just open it up and then slide your film, whatever you would like, right in there. And then you have to tuck it inside of this little guy right here. Now what I normally do is, it takes a few times to get it, but you can roll it and then you use the film advance to hold it in place, and then you close the door. And that will hopefully, oh, there we go. I forget it was set on bulb, so the thing was being bulbish. As you can see, this thing is loud, but you can see it's moving there. I've had a few times where it hasn't caught properly, and you always want to watch and make sure your film rewind is moving when you advance it, just to make sure that your film is loaded correctly. But that's basically it for the Minolta X7a. The basics of the body, at least. There's a whole bunch of other shit that goes along with this camera, but I'm going to get into that in a moment. Now the Minolta X7a is definitely a very, very easy camera to find. It's alongside your Nikon F, or, well, the Nikon F is actually a little bit more expensive than the Minolta X7a. It's almost alongside your Canon AE1s or your Canon like FTs. It is readily available. It's not the same kind of metal body that the other cameras are. It's almost entirely plastic. It feels very, very cheap, but it's also inexpensive. So there's your trade-offs. The lenses, however, are phenomenal. Minolta had some of the best film lenses of any of the camera manufacturers. They were super sharp, they were very compact, and the focusing throw on them wasn't too far, so you could be very, very accurate with them. With this camera, I basically wanted to shoot something very, very, I took it to a comic convention. I went to Phoenix Comic-Con. I also shot my girlfriend's sister's baby's birth a few months ago with it as well, and the photos turned out phenomenal. Just used some Tri-X, or I think it was Team X 400 pushed to ISO 800, and the photos came out super, super crisp. I was very, very happy with it, and I think it mainly came down to the lens, but I'm glad the camera body didn't let me down either. It all worked, and that's kind of where this camera finds its little market. It's something that's very inexpensive, but it works. You can pick this up for probably, $10, $15, $20. I mean, this camera was free for me. It was just sitting in my aunt's closet, but you could pick one of these up and take all the pictures you want. And if you don't have the issues that I did, you'll get some pretty solid photos. That's going to be it for my review of the Minolta X7a. If you did like this video, just pop me a like down below, or leave a comment, tell me what you liked about the video, or if you have any stories about your Minolta X7a or any Minolta cameras at all. I also recently just started up a Patreon, as I'm still not at that limit where YouTube will give me monetization for my videos, so I figured I would open up a Patreon in case you guys wanted any of my photos. I have 2 tiers currently, one for 4x6 prints and the other one for 8x10s. And if you guys wanted any prints, just subscribe to that Patreon account and I'll ship you whatever photo you want. I mean, if you just want something for your desk or something for your walls, let me know. I will give you whatever you want. That's going to be it for me today. So I hope everyone has a good weekend, and I'll see you next time.